You know how I was saying just a week or two ago that I'm a seasoned political whinger? I'm used to seeing dumb shit. But with the Delta COVID outbreak, I legitimately get shocked every week at how creative the government gets with their decision making. They're finding the dumbest shit to do possible. Living under the New South Wales Coalition government is like dating Ryan Reynolds in his late 2000s rom-com era, just when you think the relationship's getting stale. Every week, Gladys Berejiklian and John Barilaro think of a new way to sweep us off our feet. Yes, dude, but I'm also like Ryan Reynolds in the Deadpool era, cause I'm always doing epic shit and saying heaps witty stuff while doing it. The only difference is my face isn't f***ed up. And this week is no exception. They're just getting to the point of evil incompetence where I almost can't write jokes about it anymore. I'm just tired. We're tired of you. Gladys and John, resign. You're not helping anyone, even yourselves. And I know you at least care about that, but unfortunately, that won't happen because they're too dumb to help themselves. Just weeks ago, they were taking away vaccines from regional New South Wales to give to the city, and I was warning them, you do that and you'll have a disaster on your conscience. Well, the disaster's here. COVID has reached Wilcannia. Wilcannia is probably the most neglected place in New South Wales. The only time the New South Wales government pays attention to Wilcannia is when they try to steal the residents' water or blame the residents for their mistakes. This year they've done both. Wilcannia residents had a funeral recently. It was entirely legal, the town wasn't under lockdown at the time, and the police confirmed that the funeral stuck to COVID rules. But because the government completely failed at what should have been an incredibly easy task of keeping COVID 1,000 kilometres away from the source of its original outbreak, they needed people to blame. So future Parklea prison inmate and Health Minister Brad Hazzard lied and said that the funeral goers were deliberately not complying with the rules. Eventually, he copped enough heat from that stupid statement to do a half apology, but then Bruz saw the whole fiasco and obviously thought, yes, another opportunity to blame other people for my mistakes. Let's go! After Brad Hazzard had to eat his words, John Barilaro effectively labelled people in Wilcannia who didn't even break any rules and now have COVID thanks to his terrible policies, quote, dickheads. Well, fair enough. John's incredibly consistent on anyone he even suspects of breaching COVID rules.
Have you asked your daughter why she felt the need to take this trip?
Tom, I have no comment to make. Private citizens are entitled to their privacy, and I think it's unfair for you to be asking me these questions.
You thought he was harsh on his daughter? He was even harsher on himself. This is what's unfair. You're guilty until proven innocent as a politician. Yes. And John hates it when people are guilty until proven innocent.
You know what your son did today? He was harassing the Deputy Premier at a state funeral.
Anyway, I visited Wilcannia earlier this year and spoke to Michael Kennedy, the chair of the local Aboriginal Land Council, mostly about how huge cotton farms are causing the death of the Barker River, in turn creating a devastating economic, health, cultural and environmental catastrophe that the residents of Wilcannia are forced to deal with. Michael told us stories about how when the town ran out of water, the New South Wales and federal government did nothing. They had to rely on the generosity of the community to sort out that life and death issue, and it appears when there's a COVID outbreak, there's no difference. Just to give you an idea of how much COVID has penetrated Wilcannia, during this whole pandemic, I haven't known one person who caught COVID in Australia, and that changed when I talked to Michael. He is the first person I know personally to have contracted COVID in Australia. I live a stone's throw away from where this outbreak started. I should have caught COVID before he did. Michael should be the last person I know to catch COVID. But he was the first? Can Wilcannia catch a break? It's such an indictment on the New South Wales Coalition that they have almost purposefully let it ravage the most disadvantaged areas of the state. I called up Michael to get his perspective on the situation in Wilcannia.
Seeing as you've got COVID, that's the correct diagnosis of it, yeah? Like, you have it.
Yeah, mate. Me and my missus and our two daughters have tested positive.
Yeah.
So we were one of the first cases in town that tested positive for it. So the support that we got from New South Wales Health, even when we tested positive. So when you test positive, you receive a message from New South Wales Health, a text message. And the first message to come through was to say that our 2-year-old daughter had tested positive for COVID. This was we didn't get our results for about another hour or two later. So you could imagine what it was like when you get a text message saying that your 2-year-old daughter tested positive to COVID, you know, like it was just, it's your worst nightmare, literally, mate. But it put our minds in a lot of places. We didn't know what to do, where to go, how to deal with this. And then obviously our results came through a bit later. Again, that was a lot more pressure and stress on us. And to top it off, we didn't actually receive a phone call from New South Wales Health for 2 days later. So we had no idea.
Really?
Yeah, we had no idea.
2 days? Yeah.
We got a message to say about, we must isolate for 14 days and not leave the house and that sort of stuff, but that's just through a text message. Like, there was no support for us put in place whatsoever. It was just lucky that my partner, Arnie, actually works in health out here, and we rang her up, and, between her and one of her friends, they gave us the support and the advice that we needed to hear and we needed around us.
Well, how's the family now?
Yeah, we're going pretty good now, mate. Because we had both vaccines, we handled the COVID pretty good, and the kids, they handled it pretty well. We did show symptoms, and the kids got a little bit crook from time to time, but overall, they handled it pretty well, and me and my partner handled it pretty well.
But it's far from just his immediate family Michael has to worry about.
One of my old great aunties, who's actually like a mother to me, she played a part in bringing me up when I was a little fella, and I'm so worried about her. And then I still got my grandfather that lives with the grandson up in his house, and he's got his fair share of health problems, so I'm really concerned about him. I've had my sister, she got diagnosed with COVID as well, and she was a bad asthmatic. She's since contracting COVID, she's also been diagnosed with pneumonia now, so it's a lot of stress and a lot of worrying, mate. And there doesn't seem to be much support around the mental health side of it.
Now, having heard that, COVID must be pretty prevalent in Wilcannia if Michael knows people outside of his household that have it.
This stat freaked me out. It was kind of why we decided to ring you. That if Wilcannia was Sydney, 100,000 people would have COVID.
Yeah, well, at the moment, mate, I think we're up to about 11% of the population here in Wilcannia. So, whatever that would amount to in Sydney, it'd probably be correct, somewhere around 100,000, I guess, maybe more.
Yeah. What does it look like up there then? Do they have big tents, or do they lock people in their houses? What happens when you get it?
No, well, obviously, mate, you've been to Wilcannia before, so it's a very small community, a remote community. There's not a lot of places you can go, so you pretty much got to isolate in your home. Whoever's in your home has to isolate with you. And then, some of the people that do live with you that have tested negative, they're trying to move around in the community, so into the motels and stuff like that. But, yeah, like I said, mate, it's only a small community and there's so much you can do with you. So we're battling and struggling, but we're trying to figure it out, mate.
You reckon you got enough doctors and medical representatives up there?
Nah, definitely not, mate. Definitely not enough medical staff here at the moment, because I'm getting word that they have to obviously isolate for so long, the nurses and that themselves, so it sort of puts them in a bit of a situation when they have to isolate, and then there's not enough staff to keep working and rotating shifts and keep it sort of going at full strength.
The terrifying thing is that this seems to be only the beginning of the outbreak.
Do you think it has gotten out of control?
I think it has, mate. I pray to God every night that it doesn't get any worse, but my head tells me that it's going to get a lot worse. I think we've only just seen the start of it. And yeah, I really do think that it's going to get worse. So like already we're at, at 10, 11% of the population that's affected. So, and we've had an extra 6 cases, I think, overnight last night. So that takes our total now to up around 55, I think.
And just remind me, what's the population again?
The population is about, I think, between 500 and 600.
And you got 6 cases last night. So
yeah,
1% of the population was infected in a single day.
Yeah, that'd be correct, mate. Yep.
God, you guys are doing worse than India.
Yeah, well, that was one of our biggest fears. Since COVID came out, a couple of years ago, or close to a couple of years ago, it was one of our biggest fears was getting into, a small community like Wilcannia that's got a high population of Indigenous or Aboriginal people in it that deals with all these chronic illnesses. And, going back about 18 months ago, because I sit on the chair of the Wilcannia Local Aboriginal Land Council, I also had an auntie that sat on the as the chair of the Community Working Party. And 18 months ago, we tried to, help put a strategic plan together around COVID. If COVID was to get in Wilcannia or near Wilcannia, what do we need to do to try and keep it out? And if it does get into the community, what do we have in place to cater for our community? And every time, unfortunately, we tried to do something back then, when we walked out the door, it seemed like our plans walked out the door with us, and no one sort of really listened and took notice of us, And now that we're in a pandemic and we've got the virus here, there's a lot of people and a lot of organisations that are just sort of taking it day by day and trying to learn things on the fly and trying to adapt to it. When, in reality, if we would have worked on this 18 months ago, we'd be probably so much further ahead than where we are now.
Groups from Wilcannia have been attempting to contact the New South Wales government since April of 2020, to no avail. The New South Wales and federal government have completely ignored them. And the reason?
Well, that's the problem, mate. Like, we always believe that the government only cares about 2 things, and that's money and vote. And unfortunately for us out here, in our little outback communities, we don't really provide either for the government. So, we feel like we're left alone, and why should they worry too much about us?
Michael reaffirms that the only time the government has ever paid any attention to Wilcannia is to lie about the funeral.
The way things have happened at the moment, and some comments that were made from the Health Minister, Brad Hazzard, and the Deputy Premier on Barilaro, to us, it clearly shows disrespect and no care for us whatsoever, because on Friday the 13th, he had a funeral that was in town, a family member, a young man, and, they try to blame the funeral for the outbreak of the virus, which is not correct. They try to say that there were 300 plus people at the funeral. There were restrictions, lockdown restrictions that were broken, which is so incorrect. Like, there's even a statement from the police in town that with the funeral, every restrictions, lockdown rule that was in place was abided by the family that attended the funeral.
We then asked Michael why he thought John Barilaro and Brad Hazzard said what they said.
Because they're looking for someone to blame. In our eyes, they're just simply looking for someone to blame. When, like we said, they don't care about us out here. They had no plans in place for us out here. They have so far had no support for us out here. So, rather than make themselves look bad and accept the blame, they're trying to pass it off onto us.
Just like the situation when Wilcannia ran out of water, the government has done nothing to help, nothing to provide water, food, places to isolate, etc. Things you need when you catch a deadly virus.
Well, as far as I know, mate, they've done very little out here at the moment. Like, it's been the local, organisations and local volunteers that have made everything happen for us out here to get us, making sure we've got plenty of food and making sure that we've got meat, making sure every day that we're going all right. We don't need no medical attention, just all the different areas that, it's been local organisations and local volunteers that have been doing all that.
So it's the same story as what happened when you guys ran out of water, is it? It's like the government just completely wiped their hands of it, didn't help, and it's just fell on charities.
Pretty much, mate, yeah. Pretty much that is the case.
It is really interesting that the Nationals always position themselves as the voice for regional communities, and yet you have the head of the Nationals dismissing you guys and saying that you're to blame for a COVID outbreak being there. When really they are the decision makers, and it would be very easy, I would imagine, for a community like yours to be kept at a safe distance from the rest, from a COVID outbreak. If you were putting in the proper measurements, surely you could prevent that. But it just really seems that when it comes to it, like the same thing like we were talking about before, right? Like with water, with COVID, it's the idea that they keep up and look out for regional communities, but in reality, they've just pretty much abandoned you guys.
Yeah, that's right, mate. Like, that's why we tried to put a strategic plan in place, roughly about 18 months ago, because we knew that maybe we would not 100% guarantee keep it out, but at least, lower the risk a lot more of getting it in the community. And if we did get it here, like I said before, what would we do? How would we react? What resources do we have in place ready to go if it did happen? And that's basically what we wanted to do, 18 months ago. And as I said, mate, it just kept falling on deaf ears, and now that we've got the pandemic here, we've got the virus here, as the old saying goes, they want to shut the gate after the horse is bolted.
Right. And here also, you guys, this is correct, isn't it? There's only one grocery store in Wilcannia, yeah?
Yeah, correct, mate. One grocery store. So we had an incident happen where someone that was a positive case actually entered the store, and they had to close the store down, I think, for a couple of days or so. So, again, it was lucky that we had, local organisations and local volunteers that had pre-packed food, and that kept us going until, the store could open back up.
The one thing I still can't get over is how simple and cheap it would have been to do the right thing.
There's so many things that I just do in my line of work where I always think, don't I pay taxes for this? I would expect my tax dollars going towards saving you guys, but in lieu of that, how are we supposed to help out?
Exactly, mate. People really don't understand how frustrating and hard it is for us out here. Like, we have massive big families, so at the moment, not only are we dealing with burying family members, we still have another family member that we have to lay to rest, and we can't do it at the moment. In the last 3 months, we've probably laid, I think, around 4 or 5 of our family members to rest, and we're still got one to go. And on top of that, we're dealing with this COVID pandemic in the community now.
Yeah. No, it's grim. It really is. And as you were pointing out, it easily could have been very prevented. And you know what? Especially because it is a remote community with about 600 people in it, I imagine it wouldn't cost much. It'd be a couple of simple measures they could have taken. And instead, you've got 11% of the community, 1% in a day, getting it.
That's
and
correct.
I really don't. It's the same thing across the planet. Like, if governments just did, especially the New South Wales government, if they just took in a few precautionary measures that we know for a fact work, I swear it could have all been avoided. It really could have, or at least, as you said, mitigated.
That's exactly right, mate. And like you said, it wouldn't have cost them that much money to do it. And I'm pretty sure the amount of money that they would have put into this community to help keep it safe would have been less than dealing with what we are dealing with right now.
Easily. Because as you said, the horses bolted. Now it's a huge clean-up operation that they're not even doing.
Exactly, I ain't no Einstein, mate, but I think a bit of common sense in this country is pretty well gone out the window.
No, it is amazing because what that highlights about John Barilaro saying for you guys that you're the same as dickheads in Waverley having a party, as you said, it's about shifting blame. And really, what does that mean? It really seems like their first instinct in every scenario is, how do we spin this in the press so I look as good as possible?
That's right, mate. And I'll say it again, two things the government worry about is money and votes. And we supply neither to them, so, that's why we think that we're forgotten out here.
Yeah. Look, it's the story of regional Australia. I really am learning that, and it doesn't get any more regional than you guys. It really doesn't. It's just the further out that you get from cities, the less they care. Michael, do really appreciate you, while you have COVID, talking to us. Like, you're a champ. Thanks.
Nah, mate, I'm just, I try to be a leader in our community for our people, and, any way that I can help our community out and really get the truth out there about us out here, I'm all for it, mate.
Anyway, just wanted to thank Michael for doing the interview because, as you can plainly see, the supposed party of the regions isn't looking out for the regions. They're just swearing at them and suing me for swearing at them. Like and subscribe.
Please share and comment below. Comment.